Hello scholars, we are back and today we are continuing our talk about conductors and insulators. Yes, conductors are materials that allow electrical and thermal energy to easily flow through them, and insulators are materials that slow the flow of energy. Yes, so we're going to be looking at three different materials today. And what we're going to be asking ourselves is, based on what we see, how would we classify the three objects that we are using, and ultimately the three materials of the objects? Would we classify them as a conductor? Would we classify them as an insulator? And what evidence would we use to come to that conclusion? Now, how are we going to use this? Of course, we're going to continue to use our hot plate. Remember, a hot plate is a tool that is used to create thermal energy. It takes electrical energy from the wall and it converts it into thermal energy. And thermal is just a fancy word for heat. So it converts it into heat energy. So we can literally say, because of the hot plate, it's getting hot in her. Yes, absolutely, it is. So what are we going to do? We're going to take our beaker, a tool that we use to measure liquids. And this beaker contains or can hold 250 milliliters of water. We're going to fill it up to about 200 milliliters of water. And we are going to use my also favorite imitation Yeti to do that. Yeah, so here we go. On. Looking at my measurements, going to go right up to the line so that I know I'm right at 200 milliliters. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the amount of thermal energy that is being conducted to the beaker. How am I going to do that? I'm going to turn it on. Yes, I'm going to turn my hot plate on. We're going to go to about medium. We're going to make sure we have our safety equipment. Remember, we have to keep our hands protected. We need to be insulated from the heat. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that, and then we are going to wait. Now, what three objects are we going to be using today? We're going to use a wooden popsicle stick, a metal spoon, and a plastic spoon. So two very similar things. And how are we going to be able to tell if they are a conductor or an insulator? Well, we know for a fact by now that if I stick the beaker on top of the hot plate, that the thermal energy will move from the burners into the cup, into the water. We know that that happens. We can observe it. We can actually take the temperature of the water, and we can see that that is changing. Remember that a thermometer is a tool that is used to measure the amount of thermal or heat energy. Matter of fact, I can literally put this in here right now, and I can just sit here and watch, and we can see that the thermal energy inside of this water is increasing. The water's thermal energy is increasing. We started off at about 10 degrees Celsius, and we are rising. We're rising quite constantly, actually. So I know for a fact that this thermal energy is moving. But how will I know that the thermal energy is moving through my objects? What evidence could I have that would lead me to believe that these are either conductors, materials that allow electricity or thermal energy to flow through it easily, or insulators, materials that do not allow? Here's what we're going to do. I'm actually going to heat this up, and then I'm going to turn my hot plate off because I don't want the thermal energy to continue to go. And then we're going to stick these objects in there, and then I'm going to do something. I'm going to describe what I'm doing, and then you, based on what I tell you, are going to have to tell me, is the metal spoon a conductor or an insulator? Is the wooden popsicle stick a conductor or an insulator? Is the plastic spoon a conductor or an insulator? And then you're going to have to give me the evidence to why you believe what you believe. So those are the two things. I'm going to do something, I'm going to describe what I'm doing, and then you're going to have to explain to me either this is a conductor because X, or it's an insulator because X, and give me all of your evidence. You can use previous videos, you can use background knowledge, you can use things that you've seen at your house. It doesn't matter as long as you have evidence to substantiate your claim. You have to be able to back up what you say. Anything that you say in science must be supported. Just like these 4 chairs support me sitting in this seat, your evidence is the legs to your argument that you are sitting in. Your evidence is the legs to the argument that you're sitting. I made that up right now, but it's cool and it's true. Yes, okay, so here's what we're going to do. I can see right now that definitely, let me check my thermal energy. Oh yeah, we are rising, 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 rising. That thermometer is shooting up. 30 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Celsius, and counting, and counting. Okay, so I definitely know that the thermal energy inside the water is now at a point to where we can conduct our investigation. So what are we going to do? I'm actually going to take these and I'm going to stick them all in the water together. And then I'm not going to touch my beaker because I know for a fact that's definitely not safe. That beaker will burn my fingers if I try to touch it without my gloves. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch the tip of these materials as they are sitting in the water. And what I'm going to try to see is, right now I can touch them and I know that like it's cool. Like it's just, there's no thermal energy in these right now. They're just whatever the material is, that's just what I feel. But I'm going to stick them off in there and I'm going to see if I feel a temperature change, if I can feel that heat is moving through these objects. And if I can, then that's going to change how I would classify them. Because remember, what is a conductor? A conductor is a material that allows electrical and thermal energy to flow through it easily, and an insulator doesn't. It slows the flow of it. So I'm actually going to turn this off now. We've got plenty of thermal energy. And here we are going in. I'm going in with my wood popsicle stick. Going in with my metal spoon. I'm going in with my plastic spoon. I'm actually going to move this off of the burner. There we go. There we go. All right, now I am waiting. I'm going to give it a second, right? Because we need time for things to move. In order for me to move, it takes time for things to move. Heat is the same way. Heat can be transferred, but depending on the amount of thermal energy, it takes time to make that transfer through materials that can conduct electrical or thermal energy. Now, electrical is a lot quicker, I must admit, but you know, regardless, it still takes time. It doesn't matter whether electrical or thermal. It's not instantaneous, even though it might be microscopic in level. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to take this hand. I'm not going to touch my cup at all, but I'm going to touch the tip of the material and I'm going to see if I feel a change in the way that it feels, a change in the warmth, a change in the temperature, a change in the amount of thermal energy that is in these objects. If I feel something, if I feel heat, if I feel thermal energy, then that's going to lead me to one conclusion. If I do not feel any thermal energy, if it feels exactly the same and nothing has changed, then that would lead me to another conclusion, but you have to decide. You have to come up with that based on all your background knowledge. All right, are we ready? Okay, here we go. I'm going to touch them. I'm going to touch them. Yes, I am. I'm going to touch them. But I'm not going to burn myself because I don't want to do that on camera. Because then y'all going to be saying, Mr. W done burnt his finger on camera. And we thought he was a science teacher. But I am a science teacher. That's why I'm being safe. I'm being safe. Let's get it. Okay, here we go. I'm going to start off with the wood. I'm going to start off with the wood popsicle stick. Let's see. And I don't feel anything at all. It feels exactly the same. All I can feel is the texture of the wood. The texture of the wood has not changed. The physical properties have not changed. But as far as in thermal energy, this wood feels exactly the way it felt whenever I had it outside of the water. So absolutely nothing has changed for the wood. Therefore, now it's time for you to use your knowledge, use your background information, use everything you know. How would you classify this wood popsicle stick? Would you classify it as an insulator or a conductor? And then explain why. Why would you make that conclusion? Why would you draw that conclusion? What have you seen? What have you heard? And what do you know that would lead you to draw that conclusion? All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to try the plastic spoon. Yeah, once again, there's nothing. I don't feel anything. It doesn't feel warm. It feels the same way that it did whenever I put it off in there. So once again, how would we classify this plastic spoon? Based on our background knowledge, based on the things that we've learned, based on our knowledge of insulators and conductors, how would we classify the plastic spoon and why? Why? You have to be able to substantiate, you have to be able to use words, you have to be able to support your claim with evidence. Evidence is so important. Last but not least, we are going to do the metal spoon. And the metal spoon, I can feel some warmth. The metal spoon is warm. It's not burning hot. It is definitely warm. It's the only of the objects that is warm. Okay, So there, now we have our evidence. The metal spoon was warm. The plastic spoon was not. The wood popsicle stick was not. All right, now I need you to classify those objects as either insulators or conductors and explain why. How do you know what you're saying is true? Because that's what scientists have to do. We have to have evidence to support our claims about what is a factual or true statement. Scholars, you are amazing. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day, and we will be back on with more amazing science really, really soon.